I get a fair amount of questions about gear setup, holster rigs, that kind of stuff. So today, the video is about a holster rig I've been using for the last couple months. It's this guy. It's a bit different than what I would normally use in classes. Call this a duty style setup, I suppose is fair to say. I don't do anything cool, but sometimes I have cool people in classes, and I'm a bit of slave to appearances. So I try to use the same gear as what the students have, just because it's apples to apples comparisons, stuff like that. So I'd used, my friend Lucas sent me a rig from T-Rex Arms that I'd used for maybe the last 3 or 4 years. Like I said, I got this one within the last couple months, and I just want to talk through the differences. First off, I think every holster rig should work like this, and I think most do. But this is an inner and outer belt. So what this means is the inner belt is Velcro. This is like a super stiff belt. You just thread this through your belt loops, Velcro it on. Then you've got one side of the Velcro threaded through your belt loops to keep it in place. No, you didn't see this coming, but the inside of the belt is also Velcro. So when you put this on, it automatically just sticks to your inner belt and is really good at holding everything in place, which is important because it helps, I think, distribute the weight well. If you have magazines that are heavy or pistols heavy or whatever, and then also by having the inner and outer belt separate, it's easy just to keep all your stuff kind of oriented in the same way. Because the method I use is just when I put the belt on, well, I'll talk through the belt itself in a second, but just using the belt itself, the buckle will be just the part I start at 12 o'clock with. That way when I put it on, it feels like I have everything positioned the same way every time. The difference would be if I put this belt on, to exaggerate, and had the buckle at 1 o'clock, it's going to be way different, and then 11 o'clock, it's way different. So it's nice just putting everything in the same position, because for your draw and all those kind of details, it's just way easier to get at everything. Like I said, I've used the T-Rex setup for a couple years and liked it, had no complaints, just sent something different, so I thought it was good just to give it a try. And so I've got some contrasts to kind of talk through. Overall, the T-Rex belt, there's a speed belt, is the main belt of the product that they use, that it's a lot lighter weight and more, well, it's definitely less rigid, and it feels more like a regular belt, which is good for comfort. But then after using this with more weight on it, I think I like the more rigid and stiff belt better. You could call this overkill, but the belt itself is like, it's extremely rigid, which, I mean, is good for not making your gear move around. So the belt itself, this one is from Sub-Second, and I'll talk through kind of the main gist. So like I said, the inner and outer belt system, which a lot of systems have, but I think that should be mandatory, or be mandatory for stuff I look for. The Cobra buckle, of course, I think that's kind of the industry standard. People like these because super secure, yada, yada, yada. There's a mechanism to adjust, obviously, how long or shorter to make the belt tighter, which is under this keeper. And the keeper, it's kind of cool that they sent me. It's my logo, and they just said, email me like your logo. And the next thing you knew, when this thing showed up, the leather keeper was that image that I sent them. So kind of cool an option. I think it's like $30, and I don't know, for $30, I think it's kind of cool because it personalizes, like the belt and makes it yours kind of thing. Full disclosure though, I did not pay for the belt. They were very kind and sent it to me. So it's important to get that stuff out there. I try to be transparent, but otherwise, like, this thing's pretty fly. I would actually pay money for this. What else? On the belt, there's this little spring-loaded keeper doodad, I suppose, for your fast stroke gloves, car keys, hand sanitizer. I don't know. Whatever you decide you have a use for. It's just there and kind of handy. That comes on the belt. And otherwise, Molly, the little straps. I think that's kind of an industry standard thing. Well, I guess the T-Rex belt does not have that, but I feel like a lot of belts do have that. So that's about it, I think, for the belt itself. So next part I think is the most important to talk about is the holster and hanger. This is a little bit different than what most people use. So in my opinion, when you have the gun in the holster, I like doing the best I can to make the angle of the grip match the holster or the belt, to be level with the belt. The reason for that is it makes it the most natural if, well, let's talk about draw just briefly. If I'm drawing the gun and it's angled this way, I'm going to have a tougher time because I'm going to bring my hand up to the gun, nowhere near where the beaver tail is. So then I'm going to have to shove my wrist forward and down to try to get it enough in that beaver tail, close my fingers before I can draw. So if I have this more in line with my belt, it's just a general rule, it makes it easier from hands at sides to just bring my hand up over the gun, close my fingers. As you can see, the angle already pretty much matches, and then it's just easier to draw the gun or present the gun because I don't have to move my wrist a lot, or it's just a more natural draw stroke and easy to get a firing grip on the gun. So with especially like the duty style stuff, there's a wide variety, or like the old school FBI cant, which I don't know why anyone in their right mind would ever want, but it would look like this, where the muzzle's pointing more behind you than in front of you. As a rule, I'd rather have the muzzle pointing slightly in front of me, if that helps for people. So with the way most Safariland, ALS, QLS, whatever systems, it's kind of tough just to be like having it straight up and down, honestly. So this is very nice. This is called True North Concepts is the name of the adapter I have. They have a couple different products, but this one is Rigid Holster Platform, so RHP. What this does is you attach the adapter or the hanger to your belt, then the holster gets attached to that, and the interesting part, or the part you should care about, is the back part of the holster has a bunch of different screws that allow you to adjust how the holster's canted. So, like the little smiles kind of at the bottom is the biggest indicator of how far, and I have mine adjusted as far muzzle forward as I can, which it doesn't look like a gamer rig or anything like that by any means. It just kind of gives it a neutral cant, so when I draw the pistol, again, it feels like it's mostly in line with the belt, which I think is very important. The other little modification I did here, which honestly, if you're a Safariland customer, I don't know why Safariland hasn't bought this or made their own, but this mod is called a nub mod, N-U-B mod. I know people are always ask me in the comments, like, where do I get that, or that kind of stuff. OT Defense is the name of the company that makes them. They are maybe $15. I think shipped it's under 20 bucks, or around 20 bucks. But this thing is a no-brainer if you have an ALS. What it is just a 3D printed or injection molded, whatever, just a little piece that super glues on to the factory ALS lever. Let's see if I can get it. I'm not good at doing this angle stuff, but hopefully you can see where the regular lever ends and where this little piece has just been glued on. So when I first got a Safariland ALS, started using it for training, I didn't have that nub mod, and did several classes without having one, and I trained a lot because the hand position and your thumb deactivating that ALS, that little lever. Sorry, I think most people understand, but just in case. So we're talking about the same thing. When the gun's in the holster, it won't just come out. You have to push down on that little lever, either if you have the nub mod or not, to be able to release the pistol. So if I get to the gun and I start pulling, but I don't have that released, I'm going to have issues. So the way this works, that nub mod with it added, as you can tell, it gets it really close to where my hand is in the gun. Then when I grab the gun, my thumb just presses down to deactivate it, and the pistol comes out. Pretty fly. But like I said, I did several classes without having that, and it was really tough. I trained a lot and was very conscious of making sure I had my hand in the right spot, made sure I was deactivating that, which the nub mod is honestly like a cheat code. So for 15, 20 bucks shipped, like I said, I don't know why Safariland, maybe they have tried to buy it from them, but if you're a Safariland owner, that's something I think you ought to have. I think you'd be doing yourself a disservice not. I always get asked questions in the holster, so I'll just rattle it off. Not that any of this nonsense means anything to me. This is a left hand, though, for a Walther PDP, so I'm sure for a right-handed person it'd be different. But the model is 6354 RDSO. Let's see. Then 6842. That's helpful at all or not, but that's what this bad boy is. The other interesting part, kind of combining this whole thing together, I do have a thigh strap on this because, well, I like to party and I want to look cool. It's not really needed on this rig, so there's a few things that tie into this. One, I think they call it an adapter. I always call them holster hangers. But this True North Concepts adapter or hanger for the holster is so rigid, combined with the belt, which is extremely stiff also, makes it so when I draw the gun, I don't really need the thigh strap. It's there because, again, I want to look cool. I like to party. But the setup itself is so rigid, it doesn't move at all, which is nice. Contrast to that with the T-Rex rig, and it was a lot more flimsy because the belt is thinner, it's lighter weight. It feels more like a regular belt, I suppose, than like a really stiff duty style belt. So it probably depends on, I'm not an expert at this stuff, how much like weight load you'd have on the belt and just preference. But this setup is definitely easier to draw from just because the belt's so rigid and keeps everything in place really, really well. So, and I like their thigh strap also because it's not super, some of these are also like way too over-engineered or stiff or clunky. This is just, it's easy just to put on and adjust and all that kind of stuff. So I like their system quite a bit. 4 mag pouches. These are T-Rex Arms Mars mag pouches. So 3 pistol Mars pouches, 1 for carbine. And then on the inside, it's got Velcro also. So it makes it stick to the belt a lot better. Otherwise, sometimes you'll have like 3-4 mag pouches all next to each other, and there's not really enough for, let's try to do better angles, for the belt to contact the holster. So you have kind of a section where it's not really supported. So by just putting little chunks of Velcro on the back side of those mag pouches, that keeps it all together. So anyway, there you have it. So again, to kind of give you the run through, sub-second belt, Safariland holster, OT Defense nub mod, True North Concepts. Should have looked up the holster adapter. I'm pretty sure, yeah. RHP, Rigid Holster Platform, is the name of that. This is also True North, the thigh strap. Other than that, the belt itself is exactly the way it came from Sub-Second with their patch. So anyway, hopefully that's helpful. Gives you some things to think about. Like I said, I don't do anything cool with them, but if you have them, let's say it's a 5-day work week, a Monday to Friday, and I have that thing on from 8 a.m.-ish until 4 p.m.-ish, you do develop a bit of a preference for what's comfortable and what's not. So those things do influence my decision a bit, because if it's the weight's not balanced well, or it's not easy to get to put it on, take it off, adjust it, or the holster setup sucks a bit where it's binding or the belt doesn't hold the holster in place well enough, if you're drawing a lot or doing a lot of shooting, stuff that does get slightly annoying. So anyway, I've got really good experience with this setup so far. I will continue to keep running it, but if you have any questions for me, feel free to drop them below in the comments. I'll do my best to answer them or to read through all the comments. Anyway, like, share, subscribe, all that crap if you want to. If not, that's okay too. I appreciate you watching. Have a good day.